What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/IDontWorkHereLady.
This story's called, "You're applying for a job? I thought you worked here." Not sure if this really belongs here, since most of these stories are about dealing with entitled lady children who, on top of being illiterate, can't tell one color and style from another. But it still involves me being mistaken for an employee multiple times, so what the hey. Now, normally, I don't like to name the companies I work for, but this was almost 5 years ago, so I don't mind telling you that I used to work for Steak and Shake. This was my favorite place to eat when I was a kid, and was always my reward for coming back from the dentist without cavities. My dad's way of limiting how often we ate there. I was so excited to work there, especially since my manager during my first year was so awesome. It went downhill after he left, but that's a different story. The uniform was a white, button-down polo that you had to buy yourself, black slacks, the Steak and Shake apron, and a clip-on bow tie. The bow ties came in handy for a cosplay later on, so bonus! Now, I was in and out of homes at the time. I started living with my dad and his awful, now ex-wife, and after I was done putting up with her BS, I went to live with my mother for a while until I could get an apartment close to work. Both lived by a Kroger within walking distance. I don't have a car, and both Krogers had bus stops so I could commute to work. The Kroger uniforms were so different from the Steak and Shake uniforms, so it always baffled me every time I went inside to shop a bit before the bus came and people thought I worked there. Winters were a blessing, since I would just leave my coat on as a universal sign of "I don't work here." But people would even stop me at the bus stop and ask why I wasn't working. I just point to the big ol' Steak and Shake logo on my apron, and they'd apologize and walk away. This did not stop after I moved into an apartment either. I managed to find something close enough that I could walk to work, and there was a bus stop near the entrance and a grocery store on the way. Score! This store had a uniform of red polo shirts and the employee's name of either black or tan slacks. I still got mistaken for an employee whenever I would shop there, which at this point was practically every other day since it was easier to carry small loads and I didn't need to worry about wasting gas. The employees were really friendly too and would let me vent about my ever-growing grievances at work. Speaking of which, remember how I said management went downhill after my first year? It got so bad that I had a really bad anxiety attack one night, and almost didn't even get help if not for a registered nurse having been in the dining room at the time and heard me hyperventilating in the back. I'd never had issues with anxiety before that, but from then on, they became more and more frequent to the point that I was having them almost daily. I knew I couldn't go on like this, so I started looking for another job. There were other issues too, but the anxiety tipped the scale. So despite management actually begging me to stay, I was praised as the best drive-thru attendant there because I actually gave a darn. I started looking for another job. After only a few weeks, I managed an interview at my new favorite grocery store. Hey, I already got mistaken for an employee there, might as well make it official. I got in with the support of the greeter who always listened to me vent, and am surprised when I land a second interview immediately after my first, and am told to wait for a different team lead to take me to the back. On the way, he expresses his surprise to see me getting interviewed. Turns out, they wear white shirts in the meat department, and with how often I shop there, he'd always assumed I worked there. Well, at least after that day, he'd no longer be wrong. Sorry if this didn't have any Karens or violations of personal space, but people like that aren't very common where I live. All the issues I'd had at Steak and Shake were caused by employees, and rude customers were actually a dime a dozen. I did get approached a lot by Steak and Shake customers after leaving, but they just wanted to tell me how much they missed me and refused to go through drive-thru now that there wasn't a caring attendant anymore. And for those wondering, I was at that store for 4 years, and only had 4 anxiety attacks. Only one was caused by an employee, and management always took it seriously. I love that place. It's really sad how common anxiety is because it can really be debilitating, as in it really limits what you can and really are willing to do. You know what I mean? Not that I suffer from it personally, but I know a lot of people who do. This story's called, "He Waited in Line for This Ridiculous Flex." I'm an author on a book tour. I'm in a big chain bookstore, sitting at a table with a stack of my books in front of me and beside a 7-foot tall reproduction of my book cover. I'm chatting with someone while signing their book, and there are 3 people in line behind them. It's my first book, so 3 people in line is huge for me. I'm enjoying the hell out of it, and I'm working my hardest to make sure everyone is having a great time. And they mostly are. Mostly. I start to pick up an impatient vibe from the man at the end of the line. He looks kinda huffy, looking around a lot, and keeps trying to make eye contact with me as I'm writing a somewhat lengthy dedication for the person at the front. The front person asks if we can take a photo together. I say of course, because I am so not used to anyone wanting to take a picture with me, and I'm totally an attention hog. This really sets Grumpy Man off. "Really?" he barks. I'm trying my best to not be mad at Grumpy Man, because he's in line to buy my book. Maybe he's had an awful day. Maybe he's late for dinner. Maybe his parking meter ran out 5 minutes ago and he has so many parking tickets that they'll tow his car. Who knows? So I ask the other people in line if it's okay for this gentleman to jump ahead since he seems to be pressed for time, and everyone is cool with it. I motion for him to come up. He plops a bag down on the signing table, pulls out 3 copies of Geddy Lee's Big Book of Bass, and says, "I need to return these." Oh no. I put on my best apologetic smile. "I am so sorry for the confusion," I say, gesturing at my stack of books and the giant sign beside me. "I'm the author of this book and I'm here to sign copies of it today." "Do I look like I care? I need to return these," he shouts. "For sure, I get that," I say. "I just don't know how I can help you. I don't work here. I'm just visiting this store to sign my book." I point towards the cash desk about 20 feet away and say, "I'm sure that the awesome people who work at the store will be happy to help you." "I stood in this line. I need you to help me," he snaps. I'm pretty convinced that he's not listening to me. I'm so sorry about that confusion. It makes sense. There was a line of people, you figured it was a line for the cash, and you stood in it. But it turns out it was a line to get my autograph. The good news is that there's no line at the cash. I point again towards the actual cash. The other people in line are having a great time watching this show, and a few people have come creeping over from the coffee shop attached to the bookstore to get a better view. "Cut out this author BS!" shouts Grumpy Man, "and get me your manager!" I stand up very slowly. I pick up a copy of my book from the stack and flip to the About the Author page. I hold it up beside my face and make the same smirking grin that I'm wearing in the headshot printed in the book. The visual aid seems to have worked because Grumpy Man grabbed his 3 copies of Geddy Lee's Big Book of Bass and toddler stomped his way over to the actual cash. Postscript, I wrote, "Cut out this author BS and get me your manager," below my signature for the people who witnessed this absurd event. Alright, this Redditor is one cool person, to keep their cool after all that. And you know what? I'm hoping that, they got a few extra customers from the coffee shop maybe, because that took composure. This story's called Appears I Meet the Requirements. Welcome to Boxmart. I'm the guy in the black scrubs and a lanyard that says FBI crime scene do not cross, attached to a badge with not this place clearly named. Never mind, I'm with my wife and kid. Twice I wander off to grab something we skipped or forgot. Twice randoms ask me where to find things. Frozen veggies, frozen seafood section, both oddly placed in my opinion. Both times, I'm not too sure, I don't work here, and I try to avoid this place, sorry. And on we go. Now I'm reaching atop the high shelf to get a meal replacement drink because I often need to not feel hunger pain while not having time to properly handle it. I'm reading the label and chatting with wifey about it. Spidey sense fails me. Wife looks up behind me a couple times and I don't register that I've applied for a new job. She tugs my sleeve and clears a path for Karen, saying, "Scooch over babe, I think she needs in." And I move while turning and saying, "Sorry, lost in the label. My application has been accepted. I'm hired and I start my new position 15 seconds ago. I receive a verbal warning for conduct immediately. When you're done messing around, I need you to show me where your irrelevant item is. Your useless kids just point and send me the wrong way." Took about 10 full seconds of blinking, thinking, and checking my outfit to realize all you need is a lanyard of any kind to get a job here. Coincidentally, it takes the same amount of time for a wild Karen to ignore all signs present and become enraged at not having their demands met with groveling. "Are you useless too? Let's go. I need a relevant item today." I give wifey a good, solid kiss. She blinks and stares confused. "Be back in a sec, beautiful. Be good for mommy, buddy." Kiddo doesn't think much, but wifey catches on. Really? Okay then, have fun. I check my badge again just to see if the ignition kicks on for Karen. Appears to run on steam and the coal fire is heating up. I'm pretty new, but we'll find it right this way, ma'am. She made it down 4 aisles that most definitely wouldn't have what she wanted before mentioning my incompetence. I can't see why they'd put you in charge. I can't help but agree. I'm right there with you, ma'am. Seems like a major oversight. She follows through pet food, buy the fish, and through shoes, but draws the line at electronics. I'm looking for your relevant food item. Why would you take me here? There's no food back here at all. It's been fun, but I'm bored, and she's either gonna get the point shortly or never. Yeah, you're probably right. Maybe we should get someone that works here. Should we try at the register? They can probably call a manager from there. Looks like the at-will employment in my state kicked in. She walked off toward the food, and I haven't received next week's schedule. I'm not hurt though. The pay was terrible. Okay, that read like almost like a 4chan green text almost at some parts, and then I don't know, the writing was weird, but I like this. It's kind of funny. Like, this is sarcasm, the Reddit post. This story's called Karen vs. Retail Veteran. Someone in my friend group keyed me in on this lovely sub after they had a good laugh at some of my stories. Over the years, I've grown to loathe people who treat retail employees like garbage, and I go out of my way to make a fool of them. So I'll share one story now. I worked for years in retail before switching careers. I went from dealing with people who asked for items based entirely on what the people in said items commercial were wearing to teaching children. And this is one story that makes me think the children are by far the smarter breed. For a while, I worked as a trainer for a very popular cell phone company. I would regularly visit cellular characters and do events for customers and train employees on relevant new features and items. So I was almost always dressed very well. The most dressed down I ever got was a polo, dress pants, and dress shoes, because I wanted to give a good and professional impression. However, my style of dress came with the greatest Karen bait known to man, a silver name tag. Beyond the hundreds of times I was mistaken for an employee while at the stores, this story takes place when I went grocery shopping after work one evening. That should be enough background, so on with the actual story. I had finished up later than usual and was browsing the groceries for the next couple of days at a semi-supermarket whose logo is a bullseye. I had a cart with several frozen items my wife loves, some snacks for my son, some dog food for my dog, and various other small items to carry me through. I was browsing some spices, debating on if I had enough of a few kinds to make chili, when I hear a faint noise behind me. I squeeze in a bit closer, trying to be sure I'm not blocking the aisle. No sense in being rude, right? A second or two go by, and my spider sense begins to tingle. And then, dear reader, I hear the dreaded sound that in the retail wilds is both terrifying and amusing, depending on how far away you're standing. Excuse me! Ah, yes, the mating call of the wild Karen. I turn around to see a specimen of at least 40 years, trying desperately to be mistaken for her own daughter in what I can only assume was a pair of yoga pants, furry boots, a shirt that was strategically unbuttoned, and a huge pair of sunglasses acting as a solar panel for her "let me speak to your manager" haircut. My desperate plea for clemency in the form of her own ability to notice a mistake came immediately as I pushed my cart further away and swept my arm where I was standing. Sorry, I didn't know I was blocking you. But alas, this story would not have made it here if that was all she needed. No, Karen did not want to graze the spice rack. She had used her cosmic powers on me without my realizing. You see, because now I was no longer shopping for dinner. I had been granted employment, and Karen was not pleased at my performance so far. No, I need you to help me find some food item I don't want to malign by naming. I'm a smartass by nature. You can tell why. And my wife often jokes that I'm paid well to tell people where they can stick it and make them happy to hear it. But these skills are lost on the wild Karen. So is the fact that the store uniform is khakis and a red shirt, while I am in a blue and white dress shirt, dress pants, and wearing a company logo jacket that doesn't remotely look like an employee's. I decide to assume she's perhaps dazzled in bright lights without her solar panel glasses guarding her beady eyes. So I smile and politely say, "I'm sorry, I don't work here." Her eyes narrow, now looking like the shining black of a shark. And the games have now begun. "You're wearing a uniform. Don't give me that," expletive deleted. "You can put up that garbage when you're done doing your job." My eyebrow rises, and in my head, I hear the ringside bell. "Okay, Karen, game on." So, in my best, "I really don't hope you're run over by a stray water buffalo" voice, I smile and say, "What is it you needed help finding, ma'am?" I see the flinch. I said "ma'am," and she didn't like it. Don't show weakness now, we've only started. But in the same condescending tone, she wails, "I need item. Now show me to it." I nod and push my buggy along as I head to the rear of the store. She does not look pleased that I'm bringing the buggy. But if she says anything, she does so under her breath, and I know soon enough she'll have plenty to complain about. So I savor the moment where the only sound is the slap-slap of her boots ricocheting off of the floor and on the heels of her feet inside. I walk several aisles. After a dozen, she starts to huff and puff, and I can hear the faintest grumbling about why it was so hidden away, and why did she have to walk so far, etc. Not directed at me, but I'm not deaf, so I can hear her childish tantrums just fine. Thank God she can't see the evil smile on my face. Passing the last row of groceries, I hang a left. Passing seasonal candies, luggage, travel, etc. She's behind me in such a blurry huff of muttering anger, I don't know if she's questioning the marital status of my parents, the life choices that brought her here, or both. But she's not happy, and it sounds more and more like a car that won't start and less like a person talking to themselves. As we reach the book section, I wheel the cart right over and start down an aisle. Now the Karen is really angry. "Where the deleted are you going? I'm looking for item. If you're too stupid to find it, then maybe I should be talking to your manager." This is drawing a crowd from the nearby electronics section. My plan is working out better than I'd hoped. I stop in front of the small children's section and grab a thin copy of what's basically Toddler's First Spelling Book. A few letters playing with a small child on the cover and a title about learning the first few letters of the alphabet. Perfect. Walking back to the red-faced Karen, I offer the book. I don't say anything, I just extend my arm, showing her the cover. Like most people would, she takes the offered book, looks at it, looks at me, and basically growls. "What the deleted is this? Are you deleted stupid? Where is your manager? You are absolutely awful." Her wailing has attracted at least 2 employees who seem to recognize the whiny wails of the retail native Karen. One is on a small radio calling who I assume is the manager, while another is coming our way with that terror in their eyes that only an entitled middle-aged woman with an attitude problem can cause. With a smile, I gesture to the book in her hands and say in my absolute best customer service voice, "Actually, ma'am, I thought since you can't tell the deleted difference between a customer and an employee, you must not be able to read. So I figure this book can help." Stunned. Silence. The poor hamster that was responsible for the complex operation of powering the Karen was working overtime. So when the employee finally makes it to us, they're unaware of what I said, only that I was smiling in a customer service kind of way. Karen was still all mouth agape at what I said when they tried a polite greeting. "Hello? Is there something I can help you with tonight?" Karen was livid. She proceeded to throw the book at me, literally and figuratively, and start screaming. I dodged the book as her howls of rage wound up. "How dare you talk to me that way? I want this man's manager right now. He needs to be fired." Oh no, she still didn't get the point. Maybe I should have started with an easier book? Dr. Seuss? Maybe something on tape? She hasn't slowed down, is cussing like a rabid honey badger high on PCP, and somewhere in that string of expletives were words that vaguely made a caveman-type sense. Short phrases, mostly. The employee is trying desperately to put out the fire that is Karen. Her face is so red, I swear smoke is coming from that horrible dye job. And the distant employee on the walkie is obviously begging for a manager or a priest. I step back, away from any flailing pieces, and just wait politely, taking a second to text my wife that I was held up and to expect a good story when I got home. Her response, because she knows me, "What did you do now?" I love that woman. When the manager arrives, they must have been fresh out of priests. The woman is pulled to the side and he speaks to her, trying to calm her down. The employee standing near me looks at me and, with a bewildered look, asks, "What happened?" Not wanting to spoil the punchline, I just kinda make a face and softly said, "Didn't the haircut clue you in?" "Big mistake." The employee chirps with laughter. He quickly chokes off. I don't think he expected me to know the dorsal plumage of the wild Karen. But Karen has heard the sound and went from slowly lowering to a shrill string of complaining back to seething anger. Once again, she all but frothed at the mouth. After another few minutes, the manager gets her to step aside and comes over to talk to me. He begins asking all sorts of questions she obviously decided to embellish. "Why did you call her?" Deleted, I actually didn't say. "Did you throw a book at her? Were you following her?" Things like that. Things that could be claimed with only the loosest concept of reality. So, in a pleasant voice, I explained how I was shopping and she demanded I show her where an item was and refused to accept I didn't work here. This caused the manager to frown as he looked at me. He saw how I was dressed and I think some light in his eyes actually died. Probably realizing he had to actually think worse of humanity than just 5 minutes ago. And it took another piece of his soul with it. I've been there. So I smile and nod as I see him reason out that I was basically kidnapped to find something for this woman, and all the tumblers in his mind seem to fall into place. He must have seen this type of thing often enough to know what happened, or close enough. But I nod and say, since she can't read and might be colorblind, I got her a book on the alphabet instead. I figure if she knew how to read, it would fix all her problems. She threw the book at me, cussed like a sailor, and wants you to fire me. Maybe I should have gotten something in crayon? The employee standing nearby is done for. He begins to laugh, hysterically. Full belly laughs that sent him retreating for a door to their back room nearby. Even as he fades from sight, I can still hear the echoes of his laughter. The manager, a seasoned veteran of the retail wars it seems, manages to make his initial chuckle sound like a disapproving grumble at the retreating employee. But the way his face scrunched up, I know full well he found it at least reasonably funny. Karen is mad at the employee for laughing, having at least the sense to know that she's the butt of the joke, even if she didn't hear said joke. So, score 1 for her situational awareness. So, she starts over to us while the manager's poor soul begins to wither inside him. She's in full complain mode. Corporate this, I know X person that. It all sounds like the teacher from Peanuts, if you've been in actual retail before. Turning with an admirably straight face, the manager holds up a hand and silences her through his weird Karen charming powers. "Ma'am?" Again, her eye twitches. "I'm going to have to ask that you stop harassing other shoppers and keep the volume down." A vein in her forehead begins to leap from the skin and do a little dance as she winds herself up for another tirade. "He was the one harassing me!" She almost reaches around him, jabbing her $2.99 press-ons at me like the predatory talons she wishes they were. The manager, not happy with basically having her almost trying to wrap herself around him to get to me, holds up his hands and in a very firm voice says, "Ma'am, you need to calm down. If you can't, then I'll have to ask you to leave." The blubbering, incoherent Karenisms that follow don't translate well to text. And if I had thought I could get away with it, I would have recorded it with my phone. As it was, she protested, swore, threatened, and actually raked her arm down a shelf in a tantrum, knocking down almost everything as she screamed at the manager. And that's when I knew what was coming. She wasn't going to be asked to leave. Oh no. At this point, she was about to become a captive audience. The manager called for someone in the clothing department and overwalked 2 women who, God bless them, managed to wrangle the woman and begin escorting her to the front. The employee, who'd walked away laughing, came over and escorted me back to the grocery and told me that she was going to be detained and barred from the store. He was in a good mood, except maybe having to clean up her tantrum, and we joked about the vast level of stupid we'd been graced to see. A few minutes later, I checked out and was walking to the door when 2 police walked in, rather annoyed looking. I left with a smile on my face. Moral of the story, kids: never inflict yourself on random people and assume they have to put up with your BS. You never know when you'll meet the crocodile hunter of Karens. Now that was some pretty good storytelling. You can tell this guy enjoys messing with stupid people.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.